What on earth is he talking about, and what is going on in those jars? Starting a mushroom farm from scratch means that there's so much that I've got to show you. It's hard to know where to start. But yesterday I showed you in the video how I transfer my culture from agar in petri dishes into a grain spawn so that it can grow out and provide me with a great start for my actual fruiting buckets. Today I'm going to show you how I fill my fruiting buckets and how I prepare the substrate, and also the ratio that I mix the grain spawn in with the fresh pasteurized substrate. The first thing you need to see is an old bath. This old bath came from the dump at zero cost, and I filled it with rainwater. To the rainwater, I've added wood ash from my fire. The wood ash creates what they call a base liquid. It's a highly alkaline liquid, very similar to what they use in traditional soap making. Now, this base water has a pH of between 11 and 12. It's very, very alkaline, and that kills all the microbes and bugs that could be living in the sawdust to give the mushroom mycelium a good start. So how do I do it? Onion bags. You could use pillowcases. You could use anything that will hold the sawdust but let the water drain away. So these have been in here overnight. I'm now going to pull them out and leave them to drain for a wee while so that we can come back later in the day and fill some buckets. Right, working with highly alkaline water is a little bit like working with cement. It's not going to hurt you straight away, but it's a good idea to wash your hands and moisturise them later. So I'm off to do that. These will drain for the next few hours, then we'll come back and we'll fill some buckets. Well, here it is. No, it's not a bucket full of pee. This is a bucket full of lye, L-Y-E. And lye is what happens when you soak wood ash in nice clean rainwater. You end up with a very high pH solution that I can use to cold pasteurize my substrate. Because it's winter time here in New Zealand and I've got the fire going every night, I've got loads of wood ash, and this is a great way of getting rid of it. It also keeps everything right here on the property without me having to buy product. If you haven't got wood ash, you can go to a hardware store or a garden centre and buy hydrated lime. It will do exactly the same thing. It'll give you a highly alkaline, high pH solution that you can use to pasteurize your substrate with. Great! Well, the questions have started. My mate Graham, the Aussie nurse flipper, has just left me a message asking, "What's in the jars, mate?" So, let me show you what's in the jars, because in that last video I didn't fill in all the details. Thanks for asking, Graham. I'm going to clarify that right now. The jars are filled with wheat grain, animal food wheat grain, organic, whole grain, New Zealand, Canterbury wheat. It's cooked in a pressure cooker and then sterilised in an autoclave or pressure cooker for 4 hours. Added into it is a very small amount of high protein stock food. Yeah, now this is a processed product, but it has all the nutrients in it to give stock a real boost, and it's a high protein content. It's something like 16 or 17%. Now I put a little bit of that into the wheat. Because mycelium, which is the part of the mushroom that you don't see, it's what grows underground and spreads and picks up the nutrient, because the mushroom's just the fruiting body that you see at the right time of year. Because the mycelium recognizes sources of protein, I put a little bit of this into here so that later on, when the spawn hits the growing medium in the buckets, it will find this and recognize it and start utilizing it a lot faster than if you were to put it into a foreign medium. I've been studying this hard for the last few months. One of the things I've discovered, Graham, is that it recognizes sources of protein. If you put spawn into a fresh source of protein, it will sit there for several days doing nothing while it works out just how it's going to use it. Whereas if you put it into something that it already recognizes, it halves that time. Within 2 days, the spawn is spreading through the media. And the reason we use grain is because once it's cooked and soft, you've got little capsules of nutrient that have a large surface area and plenty of nutrient, and the mycelium can work its way through this and grow out a hell of a lot faster. Now here is shiitake mushroom spawn. This is rearing to go. It's getting lighter in weight because the mycelium has consumed a lot of the goodness that's in here. It's now time to move on. This is what's going to get broken up later on today and put into the buckets. Yesterday, I created this spawn. Overnight, I boiled and cooked the grain, and then I put the grain with a small taste of this stuff into the jars and pressure cooked it for 4 hours. So this is now absolutely sterile. It's cooked. It's ready to have the spawn added to it. You saw me do that yesterday. There are 2 to 3 pieces. I can see one piece down the bottom here. And that's all I can see in this jar. I do try to get it in the middle so that it's surrounded by grain. But over the next 2 to 3 days, this will start to spread from 3 or 4 points. And within about 2 weeks, this will be fully populated like this one and ready to go into substrate and start producing mushrooms. So I hope that answers your question, Graham. If anybody else has got any more questions, please ask, and as the series of videos carries on, I'll do my best to explain. You don't have to use grain. You can use wet cardboard, newspaper, tree bark granules, although sometimes they're dyed and it's not a good substrate to use. You can grow in brown rice, you can grow in white rice, you could grow in popcorn if you wanted to. When you're growing mushrooms, seems that pretty much everything works so long as it's damp and the temperature is right and you don't have other competing organisms. Although some methods are proven. They call it mushroom tech. Tech is the ever-growing, ever-evolving, yet proven method of working with nature. If you search tech, T-E-K, you'll find that it has, on the net, you'll find that it has quite a complicated explanation. But what it basically boils down to is our interaction with nature, finding out what works and using it to our advantage. One of my Land Rover owner four-wheel driver buddies is an arborist. Now what's that got to do with mushrooms? Well, he makes an awful lot of sawdust. So every Friday I go and visit him and he gives me a wolf edge full of lovely processed sawdust. This comes straight off his wood miser bandsaw mill and not from a chainsaw, so that means there's no chainsaw bar oil in the mix. Wood miser bandsaw wood mills lubricate the blade using water. So what we've got here is a lovely pre-moistened hardwood, and that's exactly what wood-loving mushrooms need. Best of all, I'm doing him a favour, he's doing me a favour. Doesn't cost either of us anything, except Mark gets free mushrooms. Over the last 6 months, I've watched tons of Paul Stamets and Terence McKenna videos. These two guys are the mycelium gurus. They're the masters of mushroomery, in my opinion. One of the things I've learnt is that mushrooms are highly intelligent. The mycelium that grows underground knows what it's eating, knows what to look for. Now, you're in my animal feed bin. I'm going to take this opportunity to show you the food that mycelium eats. So in my feed bin, I've got whole wheat grain that I feed to my quail. Okay. Organic, non-GMO, New Zealand, South Island wheat. In here, I've got a processed animal food that is reasonably high protein. It's 16% protein. Yeah, it's processed, but it does have some really nice ingredients, and it's already pasteurized. So what I do is I mix a little bit of this with a lot of that, and that makes my grain spawn, which is what the mycelium gets put into from the agar plates in the petri dishes to grow out. And because it's got a little bit of this in it, that gives the mycelium a chance to acclimatize itself to this protein. So it recognizes it when it meets it for the second time in the substrates, which is where we do our actual mushroom growing. And it's that helps the mushrooms to grow at a faster, more vigorous rate. What I'm going to do now is show you how I pre-soak this so it's into a nice light fluffy mixture, and that can be mixed in with the sawdust, which I'm going to show you as soon as the sawdust is finished drip drying. Now, none of this is difficult. It's all just a big recipe. There's several stages to the recipe. If you follow the plan, there will be mushrooms. So what I'm going to do is put 4 of these scoops of these protein nuggets into here and hydrate them with just a little bit of water. Now this is going to go into the sawdust at a rate of about 10%, and that's going to give the sawdust the nutrient boost that it needs to get a great fruiting flush in the mushrooms. So once again, keeping everything as in-house as I can, I use my own rainwater, which is free from fluoride and other water treatment additives. So I'm going to leave those now to fluff up for a while. Doesn't take much water. Right, I'm going to keep recapping on stuff because not everybody's watched all of the videos, so I'll keep bringing a little bit of the last video into the current video, if you know what I mean. So what are we going to be doing now is mixing the sawdust that I have in here, hardwood sawdust from my mate who's an arborist, with this high protein stock food. I'm just going to be putting 5% of this into the mix. It provides a nice little boost so that we get a good fruiting of the mushrooms. And that mixture is going to be layered into these buckets. These buckets have got fruiting holes cut into them. You can see that there. They don't need to be big. All we need to do is have various spots around the container that oxygen can get in through, and that oxygen will give the mycelium the signal that it's fruiting time, because that oxygen is going to be heavily laden with moisture. The reason I'm using buckets is because I hate waste. So many commercial mushroom farmers are growing in plastic bags, which means every week they throw away dozens or even hundreds of plastic bags to landfill. This way, I use the same buckets that are already recycled from another use, again and again and again. Now here, I've got a jar of perfect mycelium. The spawn is going to go into 2 buckets. And here, I've got a jar of less than perfect spawn. You can see how I've already spooned out some contamination. That it is possible to do that. You can't always save a jar, but in this case, I've done okay. And here you can see 2 more spots of contamination. I can't get to those yet. This one I'm going to be carefully spooning out with a sterilized spoon, and I'll be able to use most of this in about 1.5 buckets. If you put too much in, the growing reaction's far too strong and it heats up and takes it outside of its grow temperature zone, if you know what I mean. If you can keep it around 16 degrees Celsius, which is 60 degrees C, it will grow nicely and evenly at a controlled pace. But if you put too much spawn in, everything goes a bit crazy, it heats up and it ends up actually killing itself. Whereas if you don't put enough spawn in, you can be waiting for weeks and weeks for the action. Now I start off by putting enough sawdust in the bottom of the bucket to reach the first row of holes. The reason I do that is because I don't want to encourage any growth in the bottom of the bucket, because the bottom of the bucket is always wetter than the rest of it. I use it as a sort of a reservoir for any excess water that might be there, because I don't want the spawn to rot in anything that's too wet. Now you can see that I've just sterilised the spoon and the jar, and I'm now carefully removing and flicking over the neighbour's fence any contaminant. Oh, did I say that? Sorry. Yeah, removing any contamination and putting the rest in layers into here. I didn't put any spawn in the first 3 inches in the bottom because, as I said, that's a bit of a safety zone that I don't like to grow in. Then I start putting in the nutrient, the stock food, which is high protein. That gets spread in layer by layer, and I like to keep my layer of spawn and substrate about 30 mils, which is what? That's an 1.25 inches of sawdust, then a layer of spawn and a layer of nutrient, then some more sawdust, 1.25 inches, 30 millimeters, and build that right up to the top of the bucket, leaving that buffer zone with just sawdust down in the bottom. Right, that's about as far as I'm prepared to go with this jar. I don't want to go breaking into this because it's only going to cause problems in here. So this can go into the compost. Sanitize my tool before I put it into the next jar. Don't want any cross contamination. Just blow down the next jar with pure alcohol. And continue with the process. That bit down the bottom of the bag's still a little bit damp, so I'm going to leave it and I'll use it in tomorrow's batch. Grab another bag off the rack, finish off what I'm doing. Now, I fill the buckets to the absolute brim, because if you don't, you run the risk of top pinning. That's where you get the mushrooms fruiting inside the top of the box in the air gap. So you don't want an air gap. You want to encourage the mushrooms to come out of the holes. Now finally, the lid goes on. These lids are slightly modified because they're on and off all the time. I don't need that absolutely tight, grippy, airtight seal. So with a hacksaw or an angle grinder, I cut little slits all the way around. Makes it a lot easier to peel these things off again when they've been sitting for a week. That's one bucket down, 3 more to go. You don't need to see the same thing 4 times. I'll finish this, see you back up the house, and we'll round up this video back in my office. So that's another day in the life of Farmer Sam Mushroom Man. There's a different job to do each day, and you get 2 days off, and those 2 days are probably spent at farmers markets or visiting restaurants or whoever's going to buy your mushrooms off you. So don't think that this is something that just happens by itself in a dark cupboard. You do have to get involved. I've got to admit, I'm jumping into every aspect of mushroom farming. There's several ways that you can shortcut by buying in product and just finishing it. It's like people who are cattle ranchers and don't breed. They just buy in yearlings and then carry them through for a couple of years to fatten them up and then sell them on. You're only half a farmer. Depending on the strain of mushroom that you're cultivating, whether it be lion's mane or shiitake or enoki or oyster mushrooms, the temperatures change, the substrate changes, the time that it takes for things to happen changes, but the basic concept is the same. And also the scale of your operation. If you've just got 1 bucket going for yourself, and you repeat that each week so that you've got a bucket full of mushrooms a week, you'll be doing the same jobs. It's just that you'll be spending a lot less time doing it. And of course, from the 1 bucket in the bedroom scenario through to a little disused shed that I'm using, things can be done with a trowel and a spade and a fork and a spoon, as you saw. But once you get past a certain size, you're going to have to buy things like a tractor and a commercial mixer, and you're going to put in automatic watering systems and things like that. So you can spend a lot of money. But if you're handy like me, all of these things can be done at a vastly reduced price by just knowing what's available and knowing where to find it and how to make these items of other people's junk do the jobs that you need them to. That's what I'm leading up to. I'm going to show you everything that I've had to build to start a mushroom farm. It's been a lot of fun. I've been building things that have been a little bit outside my normal scope, but I'm sure you'll enjoy it. That's coming up in about 2 videos time. In the next video, we're going to take a giant leap backwards right to the beginning, and I'm going to show you how you cultivate spore culture direct from a mushroom. You can also cultivate flesh culture, which is the actual mushroom itself. So you can propagate from the body of a mushroom, from the spore of a mushroom, or you can buy in spawn that has been developed from spore by somebody else into a product like agar, which is how I brought mine in, or a liquid culture, or grain spawn, or ready to fruit blocks. So depending on what involvement you're looking at, you can jump into mushroom farming at any of those steps and come away with a supply of gorgeous, healthy, nutritious mushrooms on a regular basis. So if you want to grow your own mushrooms and become even more self-sufficient than you already are, I would suggest subscribing to the channel, because I'm going to be dropping videos on this subject pretty damn smartish. I've been doing a lot of work over the last few weeks and not made any videos of it. So you're going to be seeing these things bang, 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 one every few days. Don't miss them if this is what you're into. So hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to ring the bell. And while you're down there, you could hit the like button as well, because that always helps. It just tickles the algorithms and gets this out to more people. And the more people it gets out to, the more fun we can have on tiny house and off-grid resources.